Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Good to see you again. And if you were in yesterday's stream, thank you very much for being there. Hope you guys enjoyed it, whether you were playing or whether you were watching. I hope you had a good time. I think it was an incredible event, and the biggest of shout outs to GuildHall Anime Game Lounge for sponsoring the event and making it possible. We literally had an incredible case tournament with amazing prizes. And it was just it was a really fun event overall. There were some insane games. There were some matches that I didn't think were going to be that crazy. I just kind of was interested to see how the matchup kind of turned out, and they ended up being absolutely incredible. So I'm just overwhelmed and very happy with how it all turned out. But I did have a bunch of people asking me, are you going to do like a little breakdown of some of the deck lists that were ran, or a leader breakdown? Well, on this page, I kind of wanted to show a little bit of the start of that. So we had 19 Shanks players out of the 80 players that were registered for yesterday's event. 19. So taking up a good 25% almost of the entire player pool. And then we also ended up having, I believe it was 8 Teach, 7 Red Green Smoker, 7 Zoro, and 6 of Bonney, Doffy, and Ploofy. Sadly, and I wish I could cue the sad music here, but copyright strikes might get me. Unfortunately, Ploofy did not do as well as I wanted it to. Not hitting the top 16, unfortunately, but it did in the previous event. I think that this time around it just didn't get there, which is a bit unfortunate. However, I've got some deck lists to go over. I think that it was kind of interesting how it all turned out and how many Shanks were in the field versus how many actually ended up hitting the top 16. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop into some of the deck lists. And to start us off, taking first place was Shanks, piloted by Luis. And he had a very interesting build that, I was kind of in this, back and forth between what's better between Animal Kingdom Shanks as well as like the standard removal based Shanks with a lot of the red-haired pirates. He said neither. So my man was running the Straw Hat package, and it was really interesting to see how aggressive he could be with this deck. I thought it was really cool. He still has some of the removal pieces from Ben Beckman, but also throwing in the 5-cost Marco to be able to deal with some of those early stage cards that are maybe a little trickier. So I personally really enjoyed the deck. I had a lot of fun watching his matches throughout the day. We ended up seeing a few, but the main MVP for him in this list was easily 5-cost Luffy. This card was constantly appearing. It was constantly being a menace. The card was doing exceptionally well. So it was really cool to see that there is a third variation of the Shanks build, and that was also some of his own personal words at the end of the event. We asked him, why did you go with this build in particular? And he said, I saw that the East during OP10 was just running a very standardized, like, red-haired pirates build. And he was like, it was kind of a bummer to me because I wanted to run more of an aggressive, like, aggro deck, but I didn't see anything over there. So he came up with a little bit of intricate ratios here, and obviously doing exceptionally well for him, taking first place, going 7-0 on the day. He is running a 1 of tech, having the 5-cost Luffy to be able to get through any blockers, but also just be a threat on 5-7 Dawn. So I do appreciate that. It also does work really well with, it does need the Dawn X2. Well, you have this Luffy that does provide some of those rested Dawn. You also have Dragon. So just having it on the board, if it sticks around, it can be extremely annoying for your opponent. And yeah, I mean, he was onto something. I think he was cooking up, pretty interesting list. A couple of things that I found a little interesting was that he ran the 2-cost Sanji from OP10 instead of running 4 of the new Sanji from Starter Deck 21. So I actually didn't get to ask him completely his thoughts on this. Maybe if he sees the video, he can leave some information down below. But I personally was a little surprised by this because I thought that this Sanji in particular is just far too good, especially for a build like this that really wants to be aggressive. So I get it, but at the same time, I was taken aback a little bit. But perhaps this is more for those like aggro decks that, like lower to the ground, like Zoro, but I'm not entirely sure. I just thought that was an interesting take. Also, only running 2 of the Hongo. I think this makes sense because it's not, a target that can be easily found through Nami. And it also doesn't feel like the deck has, an insane amount of removal. It's more just, really aggro and, mid-game removal into the classic top end of Shanks as well. Sanji's been a bit of a point of contention I've seen with some decks. I've had some people, saying that this card is bait or this card is just not good, like why are we playing this? And then I've had others that are like, this is such a power play on your turn 2 that it doesn't make sense not to run it. And I can totally understand that. As a Purple Luffy player, I hate seeing this card played because I know that I have to get rid of it. And I know that I'm just going to give my opponent a card, which is unfortunate. But it's a very scary 6k attack that can easily become a 7 with just a dedication of 1 Dawn. So congratulations to Luis for taking first. Amazing run overall. And I do apologize. I just realized I did not showcase the ratios for the events. He was running the 2 of Red Hawk and the 3 of Bad Manners Kick Course. But incredible run overall. Super cool to see, a kind of different variation of Shanks that, maybe has already been explored a little bit, but I personally haven't seen, full dedication to this deck just yet. So I thought this was pretty cool. And taking in second place, we had Richard's Teach here. Richard was able to go X1, only losing in the, I believe, round 6 to the, to the winner, Luis, of the tournament. So extremely solid run as well. And obviously, I think Teach is, without a doubt, one of the stronger decks in the meta, and it's just been performing really well. One thing that I do find very interesting is that I have seen some lists dropping Daku, but he said, you know what, I think Daku is just far too good into this meta. It's also great into some of those aggro decks that are just bad for my deck to deal with. So I like the idea. It also gets him some card draw. Works really well with Van Augur, of course. But running the 3 of Daku, the 1 of the Vasco shot for the blocker, I think this is just a great tech choice alongside Katarina Devon. Because just being able to bring a blocker back with Kuzan to play a little defensively is always solid. And you also have the Shiryu, which is just now, in my opinion, like a must-have in the deck because it works so well into so many matchups. It deals with a lot of those pesky 3-cost cards and presents an attacker that's really tough to get off the board afterwards. So this is pretty solid all around. Very standard idea with the events as well. Running the 2 of Liberation. I've seen some people cut this card completely just because Doflamingo has more or less been kind of nerfed, not having Jinbei, but I think it's just, the card is just too good not to run. It feels as though, this card, if you see it at the right times, can just win you the game. So I totally understand still running it in the deck and having it there. The biggest thing for me, though, was only running 2 Lafitte. 2 Lafitte. Maybe I'm just crazy, but that seems wild. That seems wild to me. Obviously, he wanted to make space for other cards in the deck. But 2 Lafitte? I mean, I didn't get second place, so I can't question it. But that's pretty impressive that you're able to rock out, with only 2 of your searcher there. Obviously, stage does most of the work for you, but I still think Lafitte is extremely important in the early stages of the game. We also have the Shiryu and Stronger, so running the 7 2Ks. It's always kind of interesting to see what the ratios are on 2Ks because it can be really anywhere between 6 to 8. The greedier players, such as myself, going for the 6 2Ks in the deck, but he's going for like a more, balanced 7 2Ks here. So congratulations again to Richard for taking it with the Teach. And honestly, I'm not mad seeing Teach win, personally. I like and do well in these events. It's a deck that requires a lot of knowledge on your matchup spread, very precise handling of when you're trashing cards, what you're looking for through stage, how you handle, using leader effect at the correct moments. So I think it's really interesting, and personally, I love to see decks like this thrive. So I'm happy to see that Teach did really well in this event also. And coming in third place, we had my man Fee from Dozetown taking it with Blue Doflamingo. Everybody still thinks this deck is out of the running, and this deck just continuously punishes people because they don't respect how a great player can pilot this. So the only thing that really changes with this deck are a couple of unique additions. But other than that, I would say very standard, very normal, idea of what we're doing with this list. I just think the events changed because of the lack of Jinbei, as well as a couple of interesting tech choices here or there, such as Trafalgar Law, the 1 cost being put in as a blocker. It did end up proving pretty useful for Fee in some matches. Unfortunately, though, didn't prove useful in the most important match. It still got its block, but it just didn't seem to get there because it didn't give him another potential attacker. But we also have the 2K Kaya. Very, very incredible card that has been in the game for a long time now with blue. And I think that Kaya isn't going anywhere soon, but it is interesting to see this being put into the list just as an extra 2K, but also potentially just to get rid of some of the bricks in hand, because we are running a little more of our event cards. We've got the Red Rock at 3 of in the deck, and we need this to answer some of those more punishing cards, such as 8-cost Kid, some of those 10-cost Teaches. This just allows you to really handle what your opponent's throwing at you. Obviously still running the Gravity Blade Raging Tiger, because you can't not run this in a meta where every deck it has such an important 5-cost card. Besides this, arguably this is the only deck that doesn't have a important 5-cost card, but being able to handle all of those is just incredible. I do think that this into the Teach matchup, unbelievable. This into the Purple Luffy matchup, unbelievable. Dealing with some of Shanks as well, depending on what kind of variant and build they're running, can be really nice. So obviously Fee has an exceptional understanding of how this deck needs to be piloted. Did very well with this deck as well as others in previous sets. So to see him take 3rd place here and playing in the finals makes a lot of sense, and congratulations again. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, the most interesting deck list of the event. Okay, there was this rumor going around that people were losing to a Fishman Island build of Bonney. This is going to be Andrew's Bonney that took 4th place when X1 with Fishman Island Bonney. Now, here's the thing. I'm actually going to take a little bit more time on this list than I did with the others, just because I don't exactly know what the idea is and what he was perfectly shooting for. But I kind of want to go through, see what each of the cards are used for, maybe the idea, if there is some combination there. But this is really interesting. I thought this was super cool just to kind of hear about it during the tournament. And yeah. So we do have the Kami here. This is the 1-cost searcher. Allows you to find a Fishman or Merfolk card. Only top 4 though. So, but it does give you the option between Fishman or Merfolk. So I guess that's the trade-off. Obviously running 4 of the Don Quixote Rocinante. You need the card in order to protect your Eustace Kid. And just to, drop out of here really quickly, we are running Eustace Kid at a 4 of in this deck. You typically see it run at a 2 or a 3 of in the more standard, Supernova package of Bonney. but running it at 4 of here to try and keep it alive, but also, you know, to put in some work. We've got Hammond, another blocker, just a searchable Fishman blocker off of Kami, and, you know, very cheap 2-cost card that can be played off of Kid. This is the card. So this card was going wild yesterday, apparently. So Vanderdecken. On play, you can trash a Fishman type card from your hand or trash a Noah's Ark, which is the stage not being ran in this list, but it typically ran in the Hody Jones deck list, if I'm not mistaken. So you can trash one of those, you know, from your hand and then KO an opponent's rested character. Doesn't matter cost, doesn't matter anything. You're just trashing a rested character immediately. It is an extremely good card, but typically hasn't been ran in any of the green deck lists besides Hody Jones, of course. So I thought this was really cool. I love this card, and the fact that, you know, going with a, you know, a Fishman Merfolk style build, this makes a lot of sense. This is one of the more powerful 2-cost removals in the game, if not the most powerful 2-cost removal in the game. We also have Zeo. I don't believe this card was ever played to the field, but I could be wrong. I think this is more of just a 2K counter, searchable in the deck list. Yeah. And now we also have probably one of the best new cards added to green off of OP10 is the 2K Tashigi. Obviously being ran at a 4 of because this card is just far too important to protect your board. It allows you to do so much. It's incredibly diverse in what matchups it's useful in. I mean, yeah, you can't go wrong. This card is incredible. We also have the Jinbei. Again, I don't believe that, I just don't see this card as something like that was played very often, but more of used as a 2K counter because it only rests a character with a cost of 1 or less. Now, granted, there are moments where, sure, you could get around a 1-cost blocker, like in Fee's deck, it has the 1-cost law. But I think that Hody Jones is more the idea for that. I think this is really just a 2K counter that is searchable. You know, that's why the promo has actually been pretty solid. So we have the 5-cost law. This card actually makes a lot of sense in the deck list for me because you can bounce back your Kami Searcher, allow you to replay that out, but you could also play out blockers. You could use Vanderdecken off of this. I mean, this works for a large portion of cards in your deck. Playing out Tashigi as well, you know, getting that 3-cost out maybe before you put down Useless Kid. I mean, this is great. I think this makes a lot of sense. Being able to bring back some of the cards that are a little more useful for you to either replay again or to have in hand, and then taking the card and, you know, now establishing a 6K, but also establishing a 3-cost or less. So potential Vanderdecken removal off of this, as well as potential, you know, search ability with Kami, playing another blocker with Hammond. I think it makes a lot of sense for the deck, establishing Tashigi as well. Very standard 5 costs, still played in the list because I think they just make too much sense with Kid. We've got 4 of the Cavendish, 3 of the Carrot. Excuse me. And these cards are just far too good not to play in a meta where, you know, Carrot is able to keep 7-cost or less characters rested and unable to activate during the refresh phase. So I think that both of these make a lot of sense. I don't see a world where Bonney would ever just not run these cards, even no matter what the build is. So 4 of the Hody Jones, gotta have it. It's so important in the normal Bonney build, but now we're running Fishman Island. Yeah, obviously we're running this. 4 of the Kid, as we mentioned earlier, and then going into 3 of the starter deck 16 Shanks, KOing on opponent's rested characters and establishing an 11K body is unbelievable. So makes a lot of sense why this is ran in the deck list, and it's just one of the better top ends. Choosing not to run any of the 10-cost Doflamingos, though, is a bit interesting. I think that, you know, finding space in this list can probably be a little bit difficult, so I do think it makes sense, but that card is very oppressive. Obviously, though, with the lack of, searchability on some of these cards, you do kind of need to have your priorities set on maybe 2 top ends, because you're going to bottom deck a lot through, some of the Kami searches, especially if you're going to be reusing those searches through Law Effect. We do have one of the 0 cost events. I was surprised by it only being 1, but it is interesting that he is running Shark Arrows. So KOing 2 opponents' rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. I think that this was mostly in the deck for dealing with some of the aggro builds that you can typically see as Bonney, that might be a little more punishing towards, you not being able to find Eustace Kid. But this card was, I don't know. I think the way that the deck was built, I was kind of surprised to see this in here, but I guess it kind of makes sense if you're expecting to play up against some Zoros, maybe even, I'm trying to think, like 3 cost or less. Like, I don't know. That's really the only matchup I could really think of was Zoro, but nonetheless, interesting tech choice there. I think, but I haven't ran the deck. I personally would just put maybe a little more priority into the 0 cost, because it would really suck to brick. But it does feel as though the deck has quite a bit of counter, only running about 11, 14, arguably 16 counterless cards. So it's not like you're an untypical deck style that, has like a 20, 25 counterless cards in the deck. So seems pretty standard to me, but Shark Arrows was a pretty interesting, decision here. But congratulations again to Andrew for going X1 with a Fishman Bonney build. Ridiculously impressive. I just thought this was such a cool list. Kind of wanted to go over it, showcase, what was being played in it. Thought it was really cool. Yeah, I don't know. Congratulations again to Andrew, and we'll have to see if, maybe this list pops up again in the future. Up next, we've got Johan's Usopp list taking 6th place. Really solid. I believe going X2, but running a very interesting package that I think we've seen in a couple of events, but, the ratios are always differing. I think people are still trying to find out what ways do we, run some of these cards. Are there some that get taken out? So I find this to be very unique. Having, I would say, more, staple cards than the average style that was running this Rebecca Hina package in there. But there is a few unique ones that are put that I'm like, oh, okay, I haven't seen that in this list. Like, for example, Cavendish. Typically, I've seen with people running the Rebecca Hina, even throwing in Brooke or the Sullyman. I've seen Cavendish being dropped, but obviously Johan did very well having the Cavendish in the deck. I think the card is almost too good not to run at least as like a 2 of in the deck. Still choosing to run the 7 cost Luffy as well. This was something I actually, because I have been playing a bit of Usopp myself, I actually ended up dropping because I didn't think it was completely necessary. But obviously he found some value in it and allowing himself not to deck out as well. But it did typically feel like the deck does its job before it gets to the deck out stages. So I kind of like the extra slot that this card can provide by just cutting it personally. But obviously we watched a couple games where I believe he was just able to go for game with the 7 cost Luffy. So having it can be an absolute game changer. Running the 3 of on the Kyros as well as the Rebecca, so not the like typical Usopp build that's running 4 of each of these. Just having the 3, but being very very searchable and easily found through Leo, as well as Rebecca not being able to find this card, but being able to find Kyros for sure. And 3 of the Tempest Kick for a little bit of the reduction. Obviously, we're running Hina in the deck as well as Sullyman. So Sullyman giving that -2 for the on play, and since you can use this card when it's attacking with the combination of the stage, you can technically give a -4 with this card, which is outstanding. So This does really well into Lucci. It does really well into Zoro. Honestly, it does pretty dang well into a lot of decks. Even if it's a rested card that Sullivan might not be able to swing over, you can still, get that minus cost and the reduction to work with Tempest Kick, and then in tandem using the Hound Blaze to remove something off of the board. So running 4 of this Hound Blaze, so giving it kind of like a Sakazuki feel, like a little Sakazuki vibe to it. Very, very cool. Absolutely love that. And we've got the Red Rock as well as a 1-of in the deck, just to handle some of those pesky cards that the deck might otherwise not be able to deal with or remove from the board. I do understand that a lot of people are kind of teching around playing against 8-cost Kid, as well as, some of the top end of Shanks. So this makes a lot of sense. I'm fine with it. 4 of stage. If you don't see the stage, this deck just doesn't run the way that you want it to. So completely understandable there. But Johan doing exceptionally well, taking 6th place. I love it. I always love to see Usopp thriving, and it was really cool in the last, I want to say, 3 rounds. We were watching Usopp just dominate some of the matchups. So very, very cool. Congratulations again to him for the placement. Now, skipping around a little bit, we did skip a couple of places. That's because a lot of the deck lists that were in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, or in 5th place all had either Shanks, Bonney, Doflamingo, stuff like that. So we've seen a couple of the topping deck lists of that leader. So getting into one of the newer leaders, or I shouldn't say newer leaders, but more unique leaders that was able to make it into the top 16 as well, was Aiden's Belo Betty list, taking 11th place. Belo Betty is, I respect this deck a lot. I just hate playing against it. Now, there were some interesting tech choices into his list, so I'm going to go over some of those and why I thought they were pretty interesting. Running the 1-of Raise Max is totally understandable. I've actually seen a lot of people sometimes run like 2 of this card just because it's really helpful in removal, but also getting around cards with your, is it Lindbergh that does it? I believe it is. Lindbergh, yeah, that KOs a 3-cost or less. So Raise Max allows you to get around some of those 5-cost 6k blockers that are played in pretty much every deck. So makes a lot of sense there. Obviously, the very standard package of like the 4 Karasu into the Bartolomeo for the 2Ks, the Karasu blockers, having the Koala for more of the reduction as well. Inazuma was an OP10 card that also got added, so putting this into the deck is pretty interesting. It's resting one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal or less to the total of you and your opponent's life cards. I actually remember using this in the pre-release event, which was pretty solid. If I'm not mistaken, I used this with the Sanji leader, so it worked out pretty well for me. The trigger, being able to play this when your opponent are at a total of 5 or less life cards as well. So very good, works well with the deck list. We do have the 2 of Koala being the blocker and adding a card from your life, and then playing a revolutionary character with a 4 or less from hand, and you get to draw a card. So this card works really well with the deck, easily pumped up using leader effects as well, being Revolutionary Army. But one card that I thought was very interesting, I have not seen in, I think, any Belo Betty deck list, was Sabo. Sabo with the on-play, KOing up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a total cost of 4,000 or less power. I'm interested to know if this was put into the deck because of the idea of Zoro just being relevant in the deck, or in the meta right now, because I have quite literally never seen this card played in like any Belo Betty deck list. Obviously still running the Raise Max as well as like Koala and stuff like that. Technically even Karasu can do the -1 onto something where this does come relevant, but it's a brick, it doesn't have a trigger, and it doesn't work exceptionally well with how the deck really wants to operate. But I do think maybe this was just a choice in having something to play against some of those aggro decks. So I'm, hey, he did much better with Belo than I would have ever, so I'm not going to question it. Running the 3 of Dragon as well as the 2 of Dragon's Breath. This is from OP07, KOing one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 power or less and an opponent's stage with a cost of 1 or less. Very interesting. Works pretty well into the Teach matchup, which is where maybe potentially this match or this deck might struggle, but I'm not entirely sure. Again, I don't really know that matchup very well. It would stop all of the on-play effects, but it wouldn't stop a lot of the triggers, if I'm being completely honest. Like Teach it as a whole. But running the Gum Gum Mole Gun, which I think every deck has kind of been like throwing this in there because it does allow you to get around blockers. It allows you to deal with stuff on the board as well, just KOing some very annoying cards. Having a 6,000 power or higher character is an easily accomplished goal for that portion of the card here as well by using leader effect. We have the Revolutionary Army HQ, which I also thought was pretty cool. Just using the stage to be able to find some of the pieces you want, getting rid of a card, putting a new card in hand. Very similar to the Teach stage, exactly similar if I'm being completely honest. But congratulations again to Aiden for the placement with Belo Betty. Not a deck list that you see every day topping some of these events, so very cool. Out of 80 players, being able to take 11th is no easy feat. And last on the list, taking 16th place was Tyler with his Zoro build here. Running the Animal Kingdom style, but obviously still running a very heavy Straw Hat package as well. Running one of the Dr. Kurihas, which is able to find some of the Animal Kingdom searchers, but Nami as well just finds everything because a lot of the package is either Straw Hat and Animal, so it just kind of works in tandem. But we do have a very aggressive build here, obviously running the 4 of 5 cost Luffy from the new starter deck, as well as the 4 of Rush Zoro from OP01. Having the Chopper to search out some of the Animal Kingdom Pirates cards that are necessary for the deck to thrive. Unfortunately, I do believe that we watched Tyler, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Tyler's match where he was playing against Gecko Moria in round 1, and it was not fair. Gecko Moria was able to do extremely well into that matchup, which is to be expected, but he went on a bit of a tear afterwards and was able to crush it for the rest of the event. I hope that I'm remembering that correctly. I believe it was Tyler in round 1. It might have been another Zoro player, and if so, then I'm going to be a bit embarrassed. But having the 1 of Diable Jambe helps you get there when you're able to pressure down your opponent to 0 life very quickly, and then Jambe to just seal the deal, go for the game. Do enjoy that, understand what he's going for there. Has a little bit of top end as well, though. It helps kind of bring everything together. Is we have this early board that we can create, and then going into a late game, you can't get rid of this card more than likely. I'm going for the closer. So I like that. It works very well with leader effect as well, becoming a 10k. This card right here is like the bane of my existence. This card makes me never want to attack a red deck if there's 1 up. I hate this card so much. I really do. There's nothing wrong with it. I just hate it, But yeah, this card always finds Chopper. Always. If it ever misses, I'm shocked, because it is forever hitting, at least when I'm playing against a red deck. We're also running the Mole Gun, as we were talking about in the last deck list. This card is just really good for red decks in general, just being able to do a little bit of removal, but also having some of the, the power reduction in maybe having some of these low power cards being able to swing over something else is fantastic. It also works extremely well in tandem with Chopper here. Chopper adding the 2 Dawn and the +1 from leader effect makes it a 7k -3, and you go -3 to something, -5 to something, and then pop a 2k. I mean, you're popping a 10,000 power character right there. Yeah, for pretty cheap and you know, exceptionally strong swings coming at your opponent as well in tandem. So pretty neat. The Makino also makes sense for a lot of the one costs in the deck, just being able to pump those up. Yurnami and Kuriha searchers just become attackers and scary attackers at that. So congratulations again to Tyler. But overall, an extremely fun event. It was very cool to see some of these deck lists, you know, shine and just really thrive. I thought that the Bonney deck list was crazy. When I looked at it, I was like, this is so cool to see a different build of Bonney, because I personally haven't seen a different build of Bonney at all. So to have something like that and to see it succeed really well is very, very cool. Yeah, but guys, if you did enjoy the video, it would be amazing if you drop a like, hit the subscribe button. I do have a lot of content that I have planned in the near future, but I have been really busy with a lot of stuff going on, not only in my life, but with, you know, all these events that I have coming up, whether I'm working them or playing in them. So I'm very excited for the future to come. But we're going to be hosting another event here towards the end of the month. We're going to take a couple-week break, but if you guys are interested, just stay posted, join my Discord, follow me on X. You'll find all the information. And other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.